We'll get started in a minute or two here. Well, hi there. I'm Gary Reamer, and I am your host of Franchise Bites. We try to go through on a monthly basis some interesting and timely topics for franchisors and open it up as a forum for people to ask potential questions related to their franchise system or concerns or problems they may be having or looking for simply, the best course of action going forward. So today's topic, we are going to be discussing franchisee selection and onboarding. And obviously, that's critical for any system because if you bring on a poor choice as a franchisee, not only can it be a nightmare for you personally in dealing with them, but also you have an ongoing issue of what does that do to your system? It's a reflection on you who's out there operating one of your franchises. So, one of the keys to any franchise system is consistency. And when I say that, if you go into one McDonald's or another McDonald's is like the simplest of examples, it should be a consistent experience. The food tastes the same, it looks the same. Same applies for any franchise system that's out there, no matter what it is, whether you're operating a quick service situation, whether you're doing in-home painting, you want consistency. So one of the keys we want to talk about today is how do you do that? How do you onboard people properly? And the key, if this is done properly, it's long-term success for everybody involved. So let's talk about the basics. One of the biggest issues, number one, is how do you find people? But more importantly, how do you vet them? What's the process? What are best courses of action to find that solid franchisee? Somebody submitted a question in advance, how do we promote our franchise system to try to get potential franchisees? A couple of basic things that I see that are obviously very effective is one, work with your person who helped design your website. Because number one, everyone has what I call their corporate location. Where did business really start from where you got the idea to franchise? And what you want to make sure is, first of all, on that website, that you have a link if somebody's interested in franchising. Number two, you want to make sure that your website is embedded with certain characteristics. So if somebody says, I want to franchise, for example, and I want to do chiropractics, or whether I want to do quick service restaurants, or I want a painting business, or whatever it is, that hopefully at least people in the area will be driven to your website looking for that as a business opportunity. Those are one of the things you want. The other thing is be active on search engines or platforms such as LinkedIn at the end of the day. Maybe you want to start posting on Facebook about what you're doing to promote your franchise system to make sure people know about it. And then the other thing is working that there's several sales forces out there that will help you sell your franchise system. Yes, they receive a commission, but that's fine because eventually word of mouth will take over and people will just come to you. You might also have a situation where people come in and say, have you thought about franchising? And you said, hey, we finally took you up on that. And we are. Are you interested? So let's go one step further here. You've got somebody interested now. What do you want to do with that person? Okay. Number one, when it's early on, you're very excited that somebody wants to buy into your system. And that's incredible. But be cautious. I've talked with a lot of mature franchise systems, and the biggest issue that they have when it comes to franchisees is quite often their initial franchisees. They were so excited to sell a unit that they didn't look at any potential warning signs that this person was going to be difficult, wasn't going to follow instructions. Remember, you want somebody who's excited about your system and wants to learn from you and wants to implement everything you have to teach. So step one is you start to talk to these people. They are interviewing for a job. Even though they are interviewing for the right to buy your franchise, look at it as a job interview. So if, for example, your franchise system requires people to work, typically get in the office at 6 and may not leave some days till 8, and that's a 6-day-a-week operation if they don't have support, find out if they're committed to do that. What did they do before? I don't care if they were in the restaurant business or not, but I do care if they say that their biggest complaint was they weren't able to be at home with their family for dinner, then the system may or may not work for them. Why did they want to become a franchisee? That's an important question. You want to find out that somebody has the passion or the interest in doing whatever you do and you're passionate about. You want to ask them other questions, such as, what do they expect from this? I would get to know them, spend a little bit of extra time finding out about them, not just on a business related standpoint, but if you come to find out that this person is a true entrepreneur, the word or the term is thrown around quite a bit. But the reason why is if they say, I want to become a franchisee because I'm an entrepreneur, that sounds great. But the question is, are they really a serial entrepreneur? And what I mean by that, have they started multiple different businesses over time? And you can find this out by talking to them because they typically will share this. Because what I want to tell you is the biggest concern I have is somebody who's opened up multiple businesses by themselves, whether they've been successful or not. And my biggest concern is that they will not follow instructions. Yes, the franchisee is an independently owned and operated business. But remember, it's supposed to be consistent. They're not supposed to change the menu items. They're not supposed to change the logo. They're not supposed to do any of these things. You do not need somebody coming into your system who thinks that they can improve it. That is a warning sign. It's not that you mind if somebody has a wonderful idea to improve your system. Listen to them. It might make sense. But don't hire or bring somebody in through this job interview to become your franchisee, somebody who says that they can fix something that you've already proven works and works well. If it didn't work well, you wouldn't be franchising it. You wouldn't have been successful to begin with. So go through that interview process with them to make sure that they are a fit, that they can work in your particular system. I have a client that was very interested in becoming a franchisee. And I knew in advance he was the serial entrepreneur. What he was doing here is he wanted to get into a particular restaurant. And he thought this would be a great head start because the franchise system will lay everything out. As soon as that they hired, or as soon as he signed the franchise agreement, what ended up happening is he hired his own chef to modify the recipes. He wasn't happy with the selection of menu items. He wanted to change it. It was a horrible relationship from the beginning. What number franchisee was he? He was franchisee number one of a brand new system. So be very cautious. It is exciting to bring someone in. The other sign that may be a problem is they're fighting with you over your franchise agreement. They don't like the terms. Well, I have to tell you, be very cautious of changing the terms of your franchise agreement for anything that may have a long-term impact for a couple of reasons. So I want you to think about this. If you want to make minor changes to begin with, it's only impacting everything for a short period of time. You're going to spread out your franchise fee. You might reduce your royalties for the first year. Something like that is fine. But after that 1 year term expires, you want that franchise agreement to look like every other franchise agreement that you have out there. And one of the reasons for it is number one, you don't want somebody coming back to you a year later. And I heard that Joe Smith got a better deal than I did. That puts a lot of pressure on you. The other thing is one of my long-term goals for a lot of franchise systems is that they eventually sell out. It's possible. And when they look at these or I should say franchise agreements going back in time, if they have provisions that are trickling on for 10 years, like a right of first refusal or something else, it devalues that franchise agreement for a potential purchaser. So if you have somebody who's complaining about everything in the agreement, it's easy to say when you're a 500 unit franchise system, say, take it or leave it. It's much tougher when you're a newer system. So be very cautious when you have somebody who's complaining about everything from day one. The key is explain to them why you have those provisions in it and explain to them, very courteously or cautiously when you're talking with them about this is what my worries are, these are my concerns, and I might be able to accommodate some of those things, but definitely not all. And if they're continuing to fight with you on these early stage items, you don't want them in your system. So that's part of, the basics of the vetting is going through. You also want to make sure that you evaluate their finances. I mean, somebody comes to you, you're real excited, and you're like, okay, how are you going to pay for this? And that's a question you should, take care of head on early on in the process. In your franchise disclosure document, you have a range of what it's going to take to open one unit. And let's say hypothetically on the low side, it's 200,000. Ask that person up front. You're going to need at least 200,000 on the low side to get into my system. Do you have those funds? And they say, well, kind of, and I'm going to do this and that. What's concerning about that is, first of all, they might not have enough money to be part of your system. But number two, what money do they have left after they spend the 200,000? There are financing options out there that you could mention to them. There's small business administration loans. There's also something called ROBs that are rollover of business startups that people can actually use their retirement income to buy into a franchise system. But financial stability of your potential franchisee is obviously very important. You don't want somebody who starts their business and doesn't maintain enough operating cash in case they have that rainy day for the first month or two while they're getting everything going. You don't want them to open their doors and they're supposed to spend $8,000 on grand opening advertisements and they just don't have the money. It's a horrible situation. It means that the franchisee is doomed to fail. You don't want that. So be very cautious. So the vetting process is critical. And not just because I say so, but you're worried, like I said initially, that if you bring in the bad franchisee, they're going to have poor performance and that's going to hurt your reputation. So, a franchisor faces unique public relations issues. And you say, well, I guess they do. It's like, yes, you do. Think about it. My favorite example is it probably didn't impact things greatly, but with Domino's Pizza, I believe it was in North or South Carolina. One employee, some kid in high school or college, decided to videotape what he said was a booger pizza. Yes, from his nose, he was making toppings for a pizza. Well, he recorded that. It went viral. So even though that store is independently owned and operated, headquarters is in Michigan, this is in the Carolinas, it still impacts the brand. And think about it this way. If you're based in New York, you have a franchisee in Florida. If they do something down there, it hurts the brand. Also, poor performance. If you have a situation where you don't have that franchisee with enough money to get started and they're short staffed because they can't hire people because they don't have enough cash flow to begin with, again, first of all, it's likely poor performance in their location, but it hurts the brand as well. Once I go into a location, I expect it to be consistent, clean, same quality, whatever the conditions are, whether it's a gym, a restaurant, a pool, it doesn't make a difference. If I go into one that's poorly operated, the first time that I've ever tried your brand, it's the kiss of death because I'm not coming back again. Why should I? Especially when you're starting off when maybe you have 1 to 10 units out there. Everybody may not have been to your corporate location that is the flagship of what you model everything on. So I want everybody to kind of think about this of the detriment to you of bringing in a poor choice as a franchisee. The next thing that I want you to think about is what happens if you bring in a good franchisee? Number one, what's going to happen? Your life's easier. They love the concept, they love what they're doing. And especially early on, you can interact with them one on one like you can't normally in a larger franchise system. So if you have somebody who's doing well and prospering in your system, have ongoing discussions with them. Remember, they now have gone through the process. Do they think the training could have been better? That's part of the onboarding we're going to talk about next. Did they find that, you know what, your cost estimates were a little bit off? You know, it said it was going to be 200,000 to 350,000. I ended up spending $370,000, and here were what I think were costs that you didn't account for when you were looking at the build outs and the equipment and everything else. What do they like about the system? What don't they like about the system? Remember, your franchise disclosure document has to be updated every year. And whether you have one franchisee or 500, there are likely things that you will come across that you never comprehended before. For example, I had a client where in connections with the lease, we had to approve the lease of the franchisee, and part of it was that they were not allowed to have another sub shop in the strip. Okay, the landlord signed it. Well, it turns out the strip was structured in basically a U shape, but it didn't continuously go. There were really three pieces to that U. Well, guess what? In one of the other sides to the U, they opened up a sub shop. And our franchisee said, I went to the landlord and said, I don't own that side. It turns out it was a different legal entity. So what we had to do is revise our lease rider in the future to make sure that didn't happen again, to call for any affiliated entities that were in proximity of our store. So you find out new things that you might never thought of in the past. So talk to your successful franchisees, find out what they like, what they didn't like. And the other reason you want to talk to them is they are promoting your system. If somebody comes into their store and they say, "Whoa, have you ever thought of franchising?" And they say, "Well, I'm actually a franchisee. You can go to the website and you could be one too." They are a sales force for you by just doing good quality work, delivering a good quality product. And that's huge for you. So those are all the kind of benefits of kind of vetting people to get them into your system. The other thing I mentioned was kind of the onboarding. So you've gone through the process. You've done the financial check. You've chatted with them numerous times. You feel good. They have the same vision. They have the same mindset that will work in the structure of your franchise system. They signed the franchise agreement 14 days after you gave it to them. And now it's time for like the official onboarding. And what does that really look like? Well, if it's me, I'm a lawyer. I don't know if I wanted to buy into a franchise system selling fried chicken. I don't know how to make fried chicken. I don't know how to run a fryer. I'm not sure how to do the payroll or any of these other things. So the next piece of it is making sure your onboarding is smooth and complete. So part of the onboarding is giving them assistance, explaining to them how the process works and the why does it work. It means taking the time to allow them to be well trained and to have access to you by phone if they have additional questions. Because remember, a lot of franchisees come in knowing very little about your business or business model, other than they seem to like it and they can conceptualize what it entails. But as I always tell people, eventually you got to tell them, hey, at 6 a.m. in the morning, you need to unlock the front door, turn the alarm off, heat the oven up, put the fryer on, and then start prepping for the day. And then at the end of the day, you got to turn the lights off, turn the oven off, turn this off, put the alarm on, and lock the front door, and everything in between. So you want to make sure that they feel comfortable. You want to make sure that, usually this entails on the job training at your corporate location. Make sure they go around and see all aspects of the business. Because not only do they need to know how to be a fry cook, but they may need to be a waiter or waitress. They need to do the payroll. They need to do everything. It's operating a business, and many of those franchisees have never done that before. So think about if you were in their shoes. You might have 20 years of experience getting to where you're at. Make sure it's a good experience where they feel comfortable. They're definitely going to have a level of apprehension even after on-the-job training. But, sometimes franchisors even will, for the first few days after opening, will have a trusted manager go and help out to answer questions. Or the final test for the on-the-job training is you simply require somebody to run your location for one day. See what it's like. So they understand the pressure. If an employee doesn't show up, what happens? Are they able to juggle it? Because life happens, as you know, with your business. It never always goes smoothly. So the key is to, one, train them, answer as many questions as possible, and talk with them, talk with them, talk with them. I can't emphasize that enough with new systems. Schedule a weekly call with them that say, this is kind of a continuation of our onboarding. For the first year, we want to be able to talk with you at least once a week. We block off a half hour. It might be less than that, but they know that on every Sunday morning at 11:30, when it's quiet, that they're going to speak with you. You will not always be able to do that, but you will help them out to be the poster child of what your system should be. And you will learn quite a bit because you'll start to see the questions that they're asking about and saying, you know what, we should have trained on that. Or, this is like out of left field. This normally doesn't happen. Help them through that situation. Make sure that they feel comfortable. And by knowing that they can pick up the phone or have a scheduled call once a week, they can go through those problems, they can deal with it, and know they have somebody to talk to in the future. As you get multiple locations, you can decide whether you want to have a monthly call with all the franchisees to discuss what's going on, questions or concerns. You will have to decide whether you want to put 10 people on a call together or not. But, it's a definite option to let people know that they can share their experiences, their successes, whatever else, and build a team, whether that team's all in one state or separated between 6 or 7 states, it doesn't matter. One of the stories I tell people when you talk about kind of the onboarding and continuing training is I had the pleasure of going to a national convention for a large franchisor. And I think the best way to talk about it, though, and I don't mean this in a negative way, is you got everybody drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody was excited about the system. They were excited to share stories of their success. They have a bunch of like bonding experiences, events, dinners, speakers, and also awards where you try to give out awards for different things. It wasn't just, the most sales, but, for highest customer satisfaction ratings, things like that. So that's what you want. You want to build a system where everybody believes in it. The other thing that you want to emphasize as you're continuing to go, even if you find that wonderful franchisee that's doing everything right, what happens when it goes through this onboarding process? You've done everything, they're working, and there's a problem. There's a complaint. Somebody posts online a really negative review. Was it somebody, that did something wrong at your franchisee's location? Take those seriously, okay? Talk to the franchisee. See if we can figure out if we can make that person happy at the end of the day. We live in a significantly different time where people can write negative reviews that adversely impact. Or maybe one of the things you keep on promoting with your franchisees is ask if somebody will write a review. Somebody who's a consistent customer, who says how thrilled they are with everything that you did. Again, you want to go talking about sales. It's just like if you're buying a product on Amazon, you might look at all of those reviews. If I'm looking to buy a franchise, I might look at what the reviews are from the different franchisees that are out there. Are they doing things right? Does it have a positive image? All of these things come into play. It's not easy. And it's not easy for any franchisor. And the reason I tell you that is when I sit down with franchisors, you've just taken on a brand new job. You know how to run your business. You've done it very successfully. You might have opened numerous locations and been very successful at that. But now you have to teach somebody how to open their location. You have to watch them. You have to collect the revenues. You have to train them. You have to make sure that they're reporting all their sales. You're making sure that they're not doing anything to destroy what you've built up. There is a level of name recognition, and you don't want that destroyed. So having said that, there's a lot of different pieces to this whole thing. So what I want to emphasize is take the time to get to know your potential franchisees. Make sure they appear to be a fit, not just because you want to sell, not just because you're flattered because they're interested in your system. You want them to sell you to make sure that you want them. And that's critical. Do your due diligence with them. Go through everything you need to feel comfortable. Make sure you protect yourselves by not giving too much in the terms of the franchise agreement. Train them thoroughly. And remember, communicate with them. So that's my little tidbit of bites for today. But I do want to answer one more question that was submitted. And the question was, how do you close the deal for once you find the franchisee? Well, a couple things when it comes to closing the deal. Make sure, number one, first of all, that they're a fit and get through the tough questions before, as I mentioned. Do they have the financial resources so you don't waste your time? If they don't have the money at the start of the conversation, they're not having it at the end. When it comes to closing the deal, you want them to be so hungry and so excited by everything you've told them about your system. And I have never talked to a franchisor that wasn't passionate or excited about their business. You don't get into franchising because you think you're instantly become a millionaire or a billionaire. You do it because you're passionate about your business. When they see that, it helps come naturally. You want to show them your location. And the last piece, when they're ready to sign on the dotted line, my advice is they might say, I'm really nervous. This is a huge investment. I'm going to be spending over the next 6 to 9 months $400,000. And you can tell them, I think the best advice is when you started in business, I guarantee everyone out there was nervous. They might have taken a huge leap of faith. Some people have less anxiety, some more. But that's what they need to also hear to help close the deal. It's natural to be a little bit, scared. This is a big investment. But look at what I created, and I want to help you create the same thing. A very successful business. I've gone through the tough times with the hope that you don't have to. And I think that can be very helpful in the sales process. The other thing, buy a book on sales. Most people aren't used to necessarily selling. And when I say that, selling a product, if you have a brick and mortar location, you're promoting it and people come in. That's what happens. If I walk into a Subway, I'm there because I want a sub. There's not a lot of selling to be done at that point in time. But so therefore, you might not really be used to selling your franchise system. And it can be a wonderful exercise to buy one of the numerous books out there and make sure that you understand you're going to be uncomfortable with that. And that's fine because you may not be a natural salesperson. That's okay. So read some books, feel comfortable, and that might also give you some inclinations of what you need to do to help close the deal. So with that said, I want to thank all of you for tuning in until next month. Also, please remember that you can always reach out to me, send me an email if you have any business related or franchisor related questions. I want to make sure that if I get those questions in advance that I can kind of share them with the group, because as we always know, if I got a problem, somebody else has the same problem. We might as well share that with people and educate them. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for attending today. And until next month of the next Franchise Bites, I will see you then. Thank you.